Good evening. I'm Teresa Skupic, and this is Forum Daily for Friday, December 13th. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Turkey's foreign minister today in an effort to unify Middle East nations in support of a peaceful political transition in Syria.
Very focused on the opportunity that now is before us and before the Syrian people to move from out from under the shackles of Bashar al-Assad to a different and better future for the Syrian people, one that the Syrian people decide for themselves. And we talked about how Turkey, how the United States, how other partners in the region can support those efforts.
Mr. Blinken says that there is broad agreement between Turkey and the United States on what they would like to see in Syria following the ouster of President Bashar Assad. He says that both nations are concerned that a power vacuum in Syria could create conditions for the Islamic State group to flourish. Russia's defense ministry says its military launched dozens of long-range precision missiles and hundreds of drones targeting critically important fuel and energy facilities in Ukraine to hinder the country's ability to fight. But Ukrainian officials say that the Kremlin is using terror tactics by targeting energy infrastructure that often leaves civilians in the dark with no running water or heating. Those same officials say that Moscow is also stockpiling cruise and ballistic missiles for more attacks. The government is intervening in the Canadian postal workers' strike.
And Canadians must be assured that their government will take all necessary actions to protect them, especially when the safety and prosperity of workers and communities are at risk. I am making this decision to protect the interests of all Canadians. It is not a decision I take lightly, but in this situation, it is the right one. First, the business impacts. During the strike, Canada Post cannot process an estimated 1 million parcels per day. This disruption is particularly detrimental to small and medium-sized businesses, and the economic harm they suffer increases with each passing day. In fact, has accumulated significantly to this date. Second, on charities, direct mail fundraising is a main way of securing critical annual donations, and all this fundraising has been jeopardized during this dispute. The holiday season is the most important fundraising period, with many charities receiving a significant portion of their annual revenue during the final weeks of the year, particularly in December. And let me pause and just say that I invite all Canadians to consider any way they can to support the charities of their choice, and we obviously hope they avail themselves of all possibilities to do so, whether postal or other means.
Federal Labor Minister Stephen McKinnon says that negotiations are at an impasse and that Canadians are fed up. He asked the Industrial Relations Board to report on whether it thinks a deal can be struck by the end of the year. If it deems a deal is unlikely, Canada Post and the workers will be ordered back to work. Key issues in the strike include wages, job security, and how to staff a proposed expansion into weekend delivery. Border security officials in Canada say barely any illegal drugs are crossing the border into the U.S., bringing Donald Trump's claims of drug trafficking to the U.S. into question. Canada Border Services Agency Vice President of Intelligence and Enforcement Aaron McCrory says Canada is not a significant source of fentanyl in the United States. He made the comment to the House of Commons Committee studying the impact of Trump's plans for border security and migration. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration also admits the amount of fentanyl coming from Canada is comparable to a slippage. The Liquor Control Board of Ontario might be barred from buying American spirits and booze when Donald Trump takes office. The possible restriction comes as Ontario Premier Doug Ford considers ways to counter the 25% tariff threat leveled by Mr. Trump. Mr. Ford originally signaled that Ontario would restrict power exports to 5 American states, but Mr. Trump brushed off the threat. Mr. Trump says the U.S. is subsidizing Canada, and it shouldn't have to do that. Parliament's budget watchdog suggests that government spending on housing isn't meeting the country's needs. Thursday's report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer says that 2.4 million Canadian households live in unaffordable, unsustainable, or inadequate housing. It says the number is rising despite billions in government spending to address the housing shortage. The PBO report estimates an additional 200,000 households will need help because incomes aren't keeping up with housing costs. All right, stay with us. Up next, Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador resolve the Churchill Falls dispute. And Meta complies with the CRTC to publicly disclose the works of its news blocking measures. After that, we'll have our weekly energy update with Dan McTeague. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages. Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador have announced an energy deal to resolve a decades-old dispute.
That's why when a moment like this comes along, I certainly feel the weight of the responsibility to get it right. My friends, I am humbled to deliver some extraordinary news with you all. Today, everything changes for Newfoundland and Labrador.
The new agreement will see Hydro-Quebec pay 30 times more than the bargain basement price for Churchill Falls Power negotiated in 1969. Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey says that over 50 years of a lopsided agreement has ended. Meta has complied with an order from the CRTC to publicly disclose how its news blocking measures function on Facebook and Instagram. The regulator asked Meta what measures it's taking to comply with the Online News Act and if news is being made available on its platforms. If Canadian news is available on Meta's site, it would require the company to compensate media outlets for displaying their content. When the act came into law, Meta blocked news from Facebook and Instagram in response. Former Alberta Premier Rachel Notley is resigning as an MLA. She announced she's leaving the Alberta legislature December 30th, but did not say what her future holds. Ms. Notley fought back tears as she called it an honor to represent her Edmonton riding for nearly 17 years. Current Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi does not have a seat in the House and has said that he wouldn't rule out running in Edmonton. The Canadian Epilepsy Alliance is warning of severe consequences as an ongoing shortage of an epilepsy medication threatens to trigger seizures in some patients. The shortage of tevaclobazam is expected to last until April next year due to manufacturing disruptions. Experts say that people who are stable on the drug can't swap out the medication for a similar brand due to the risk of breakthrough seizures. Yesterday, Canada's memorial to the victims of communism was officially unveiled.
Today we gather here on December 12, 2024, on a momentous occasion of remembrance, reflection, and resolve. The unveiling of the Memorial to Victims of Communism Canada Land of Refuge is not only a culmination of years of dedication and vision, but also a resounding testament to the values that defined us as a nation. This memorial stands as a solemn tribute to countless lives shattered by regimes rooted in oppression. It is a monument to the resilience of those who endured. It is the courage of those who resisted and the memory of those who've perished. It is also a beacon of hope and reminder of Canada's unwavering commitment to freedom, human dignity, and justice.
Located on the west side of the Garden of the Provinces and Territories in downtown Ottawa, the memorial also recognizes Canada's international role as a place of refuge from injustice and persecution. Monument Design Team member Paul Raff spoke at the ceremony about the conception and the design for the memorial itself, which he called the Arc of Memory.
It faces due north, and it orients us in time as well as space. Each one of its 365 vertical fins demarks one day of the year, from east to west, from the peak of summer to the middle of winter, and back through spring to summer solstice again. And on each of those days of the year, every hour from sunrise to sunset is made visible as an azimuth. That is, the unique angle of the sun at each of those respective moments in time. In this way, the Arc of Memory is a three-dimensional calendar, and it lets us locate moments from other times and other places, moments of historical importance. From a distance, it's unusual. Its highly original form is open and receptive. As a visual sculpture, it uses the artistic strategy of passive kinetics, meaning that although it does not move, motion is integral to its being. Its sweeping arrays, its rhythmic dynamics engage us in a direct and experiential way. As we move around it, its form seems to shift and unfold.
All right, stay tuned. Up next, we have Forum Daily's weekly energy update with Dan McTeague. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Now it's time for Forum Daily's weekly energy update with Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. All yours, Dan.
Effect on pricing at the pumps for quite some time. But right now it's costing in places like Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes about 25 cents a litre. So that weak Canadian dollar that so many people cheer about because we like blocking pipelines in Canada and we vote for parties that love it. NDP, Green, Bloc, Liberals. Most Canadians have no understanding of how difficult they've made life for themselves by voting for any of these four parties. And as a result of this, you and I are paying a significant amount more than we ought to be paying. The Canadian dollar alone, as I mentioned, 25 cents a litre. But imagine a carbon tax and a second carbon tax, which is ranging between 17.61 for the first carbon tax plus GST or HST or TQS or whatever you have. That's 5 to 15%, depending where you are in the country. And the second carbon tax, which for Ontario and some parts of the West will start to be about 4 cents a litre buried in the wholesale price of gasoline. You won't see it. I will see it. And that means that right now I'm starting to see the price difference between American and U.S. markets and what we pay in terms of wholesale prices for gasoline has jumped to about 15.2 cents a litre. I've referred to that as the crude to rack difference in Canada. And if the Americans are paying, for instance, $1.98.85 a gallon, even when you multiply the Canadian dollar at 141, 142, and then of course divide that by 3.78541, you still come up with refiners in Canada charging a lot more. And it's not because they can do it, because it's fairly transparent how they're able to do this. Is because Canadians, that's you and I, have accepted the idea that, we should have a second carbon tax, a clean fuel standard. And by the way, you're not rebated on that. So the difference is about 15 cents a litre. And what this already means is that could a change in government make a difference in terms of gasoline prices? And not only would it do that, getting rid of carbon taxes, the first and the second, would also alleviate food costs. As Sylvain Charlebois has quite rightly pointed out in a peer-reviewed study that has a lot of economists who think they're cute and trendy by saying, I have a great name, therefore I can say anything I want. No, they've not and cannot make the assertion that carbon taxes don't have an impact on food prices. But I digress. When it comes to energy, gas prices across the country remain stable but high. And imagine tomorrow if we started selling more oil to the world, the United States in particular, which of course runs counter to what Doug Ford wants to do. I would think he would be smarter to follow the advice of Danielle Smith and get our job done, protect your borders and stop sending people who shouldn't be in this country down south of the border of the United States. That's my opinion as a Liberal MP of 18 years. I think Ford's got it wrong. He's drinking from the Trudeau coffee maker, and that's unfortunate because it's going to make a bad situation worse. But I digress. Get back to the issue of strengthening the Canadian dollar, getting more investments in Canada, making this a prosperous place. People want to buy our energy. Why not? Why not let them do it? But that would save you about 25 cents a litre. And on top of that, Teresa, really important that people understand the carbon tax would take out another 25 cents a litre. So imagine this, 45 cents a litre less. We're paying $1, $1.10, $1.20, depending where you are in the country. In some places, as low as 85 cents a litre, like Manitoba, which got rid of its provincial sales tax temporarily. So I think it's a pretty strong argument to be made that given a cost of everything depends on the cost of energy. And when you see Europe now running dry, going black, basically because of a power problem in places like Britain, because of the cable that undergoes the English Channel to France, and they've had unplanned shortages there and cutbacks there. We don't need, as a country, blessed with the abundance of energy, to really cut our noses off to spite our face. And that's exactly what we're doing in Canada. So by all means, go vote Liberal, NDP, Green, and to some extent Bloc, and you'll find out exactly what it's like to exist in a North American cold climate with no energy. And that's where we're heading. Unfortunately, I don't think these folks that have been planning this kind of stuff have really given much thought to it. Their EV mandates are gone in the United States, which means the Doug Ford Trudeau governments have put money towards something that's not going to be needed. No battery plants are being built. They're all going bankrupt. not all of them, but a good number of them, as well as on the automotive sector. So while we can talk about gasoline prices remaining stable across the country for the next week, it's important to recognize that government policies, federal and provincial, have a lot to do with this. And municipal governments, stay in your lane. Get out of the idea of banning natural gas. You have no business doing that, and you're going to cause people to freeze in the dark. If that's what councillors want, then those councillors should be told the next provincial and municipal election to find another job, because they're going to be shown the door. That's it for this week, Teresa. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for that, Dan. Again, that was Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, with Forum Daily's weekly energy update. All right, don't go anywhere. Coming up, we'll be talking to the Humane Society about gifting a pet for Christmas and things to consider before doing so. Stay with us. Forum Daily will be right back after these messages. While many families are looking for the perfect gift to give, some think about the gift of a pet. But what many don't consider is there are other places to look before a breeder, like the Humane Society. The Ontario Humane Society provides care, comfort, and compassion to all animals and advocates to treat them with respect and kindness. The Humane Society of Greater Niagara reported that 2024 has been a disturbing year for pets being surrendered by owners or being dropped off by members of the public who have found abandoned animals. I was joined earlier by Brianna Dingman with the Humane Society of Greater Niagara to discuss everything you should consider before bringing home a furry friend over the holidays. Brianna, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
No, of course. Now, would you mind explaining the process of adoption with the Humane Society?
So our adoption process is very easy. The majority of our adoptions are done online. So adopters or potential adopters will visit our website where they just follow the steps. They click a link and then follow the steps, and they can apply for the animal that they're interested in. At that point, they would then come in for a half an hour meeting with the animal. And then at that point, if everything goes well, the animal is able to go home with them. We also have people walk in as well, and we can help them with the application that way, like if they're here in person. It's just a very easy process. Either we prefer them to be online, it just helps kind of stream things through, but a lot of people will have challenges with online, or they have whatever issues happening. So they are also welcome to come into the shelter as well, and we can walk them through it.
Now, a lot of people do consider adoption over the holidays, bringing a pet home over the holidays. But why is it important to consider adoption over the mainstream breeders?
It's really important to consider adoption because all of the shelters, all of the rescues, we're all overflowing right now, unfortunately, with all really good animals that deserve homes. Also, when you adopt, the animal that you're adopting comes spayed or neutered, microchipped, up to date on their boosters. I can't speak for all shelters, but ours, for our dogs, we offer 6 weeks of training as well. And those are things that you don't typically get when you go to a breeder. And also you're helping an animal get a second chance. So it is really special.
Now, what are things to consider before considering bringing home a furry friend, especially over the holiday season?
Yeah, so we always make sure that people really consider what they're doing and what they're bringing home, especially around the holidays. People can sometimes be impulsive or not really think things through. So we just encourage people to make sure that they're financially ready to bring an animal home, that they do their research on which type of animal they're interested in adopting. A lot of times, especially with like our small animals, they assume that like a bunny or a bird is not a lot of work, but they in fact are. So we just always encourage people to make sure that they have all the appropriate information, that they're okay to care for this animal long term, because it is more than just a gift or a temporary welcoming into their home. We want them staying there forever. So we just want people to make sure they're prepared any time of the year when they're bringing an animal home.
Now, you did just mention smaller animals like bunnies and birds, but I think there's a misconception that the Humane Society only has dogs and cats. Would you mind giving us like maybe a small list of just some of the animals that are available for adoption?
We have all of the animals. Right now in our care, we do have, of course, a lot of dogs and cats. We have bunnies, guinea pigs. We have a couple of smaller parrots. We have conures. But on any other day, we've had reptiles, like snakes. We have to be mindful because of the bylaws and what's allowed around in each municipality. But yeah, we do have reptiles sometimes. We've adopted out goats and potbelly pigs. And so we just actually found homes for two koi that were found abandoned, the larger fish. So anything is welcome here at the shelter.
And why is it so important that people donate over the holiday season? We have about 20 seconds left. So do you mind just breaking down why donations are important?
Yeah, for sure. Donations are so important. We run entirely on donations for the care of the animals, whether that being just like your basic food, enrichment, all their medical care, things like that. So we rely very heavily on donations, especially right now. We are overrun with puppies and kittens and all of the animals. So all of the donations are extremely, extremely helpful, especially around the holidays.
Brianna, thank you so much for the time today, and I hope you have an amazing holiday.
You as well. Thank you.
I'm Teresa Skubik, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember, for more news on demand, you can always visit our website at thenewsforum.ca and make sure to follow us on social media. Good night, Canada.